A few minutes while folks straggled back from lunch. This is session C103, Streaming Deployment Architectures in Higher Education. We're going to be talking today about some of the technologies used to deliver content online, both live and on-demand to students, wherever they happen to be, whether on campus or off, and about some of the flipped classroom and other types of models that are coming to fruition now and changing the way we deliver content, and sometimes forcing us to move our content and our infrastructures to a different level, to a different stage in order to deliver the content that our users expect. And in many cases, we find that the students coming into universities and colleges, of course, have grown up now in sort of the YouTube generation. They are used to getting video and consuming video and learning things that way. And it becomes a very, I think, more effective for educators if they can talk to folks, these people coming into the colleges, and with these modes of media that they are used to using. So today that's what we're going to focus on. My name is Chris Knowlton. I work with Wiles and Media Systems. I'll be the moderator, and then we'll just go down the row and have folks from the educational education institutions introduce themselves.
My name is John First. I work for Oak Hills Local School District in Cincinnati, Ohio. We're a pre-K to 12 institution, and I'm our digital media specialist, websites, photography, video, audio, all that stuff.
Hi, I'm Jermaine Wells. I work at Union College, a small school in Schenectady, great liberal arts school. A couple years ago, we won the NCAA championship in hockey. Had to throw that in there. But I'm the Learning Environments Coordinator. That encompasses a lot: classrooms, video, audio, and basically all media.
My name is Derek Freeman. I'm a program manager and webcast producer in the Center for Continuing Medical Education at the Ohio State University Wexner Medical Center in our College of Medicine. And I manage a webcast, CME webcast that we use for subscription purposes. Different hospitals subscribe to our program, and they can watch in a group setting or online individually. And in addition to that, we have a podcast and YouTube videos that we provide for individuals.
Hi everyone, thanks for attending this session. My name is Chris Martin. I'm not the same Chris Martin as the guy from the band Coldplay, who was married to Gwyneth Paltrow. I've never been married to Gwyneth Paltrow. Not that it will never happen, but it hasn't happened yet. What I really am, though, is an IT and multimedia manager at the University of Pennsylvania, which is a short 90-minute train ride down to Philadelphia from here. I do a little bit of everything in an IT role, but I really have an audio and video production background from my degree to my career before this role. The main thing that I'm involved in as far as webcasting pertains to a modern and contemporary poetry course that the school offers on Coursera.org, which is an open online platform for classes that are open and free to the world. Free to sign up for. Anybody with an internet connection can sign up for this course. And we do a weekly live webcast each week of our 10-week course.
Great. Thank you for introducing yourselves. So just to highlight what we're going to cover, you see here photos of actually live production happening in a classroom at Purdue. We're going to cover situations like that where it's both being live streamed and recorded. And then we'll also talk a little bit about the flipped classroom. And for any of you who are not familiar, I'm assuming most of you are familiar, but I'll just touch on it really high level. Flipped classroom is basically the idea that a student gets assigned some video to watch ahead of time. They basically hear the lecture, typically pre-recorded ahead of time, and then come into class and work with other students on the material and with the teacher and make sure that they understand it correctly based on the lecture they had and the materials in front of them. And then the third stage is being able to take that information that you've gotten from both the lecture and your in-classroom participation and refining your understanding of the material. So I'd like to find out, I think we'd all like to find out, a few questions about you, the audience, just so we know who's out there and what information you're looking for. So by show of hands, how many today are using streaming in your institutions? How many are not yet using streaming? All right, looks like pretty much a full house of folks who are streaming. For our audience at home, that was almost everybody raising their hands. How many of you are delivering live lectures using streaming today? Okay, it looks like about a fourth of the audience. How many of you are supporting flipped classroom video delivery? It looks like about an eighth of the audience.
Smaller.
And how many of you are supporting web conferencing as part of delivering your courses? Okay, and that looks like about a third. Okay, great. Thank you very much. That may help us as we go through. What we'd like to do is make this somewhat of a conversation. We're going to have a number of questions that I'll present to our panelists. They will answer. If you have questions along the way, you can either save them for the end, realizing that our time is short, or you can raise your hand right away, and if we can answer a question, we'd be happy to try and do so. So with that in mind, let's get started, and I'll fire off the first question to the panel. Guys, if you could explain to us one by one, maybe we'll start at the far end this time and work this way. The streaming media usage scenarios you work on, you've already touched on it at a high level, maybe dive into it a little bit more. Oh, actually, I guess based on the slides, I better start at this end. John, we'll start with you. And I'll throw up the slide that you've provided that sort of gives the overview of your infrastructure, and maybe you can walk us through it and just for a minute or two and explain exactly what it is you're doing for that usage scenario.
Okay.
I love when slides are not in the order I
You
expect.
can do his.
Okay.
For the
There
sake
you
of
All right.
time.
Yeah.
We'll do it that way.
Okay, it's fine. Like I said, I'm from Union College, and this is basically a workflow of a mobile streaming pack. So I'll have the Canon XA25. I also use the XA15 because it has onboard memory. The Roland V50 mixer, and with that, I can have a laptop and a couple cameras in there. Usually I have it hooked up through HDMI right into my Mac, and I use Ustream Producer. Also, we pay for the upgrade for it to go 720p when it's streaming. So that's basically a nice little mobile pack that we take along. I as well, of course, record live the event in case anything happens. I can still edit later on. With Ustream, I find it really easy to use Ustream Producer. It's pretty straightforward, but I guess I'll take any questions if anybody.
All right, and that's the live strategy. Let's
That's
go ahead.
the
You
live
also
strategy.
supplied a slide showing
Yes,
your
I
on-demand
did.
strategy, and that was a little bit more interesting in terms of complexity. So maybe you could walk us through
Yes,
that real
indeed.
quick.
With the video on demand, which is what do you do when you have all this material to work with? So this is our streaming library. We're in a consortium of 6 liberal arts colleges called the New York 6, and we bought into this on-demand thing through Ensemble Video. It's called Ensemble Video, but we have music, MP3s, and we have video. And it's a nice tool. It's easy to use. Once we upload our materials, you can put it into your LMS. I don't know if you're using Blackboard. We use something called Nexus, which our professors then have on materials in the classroom and share that with the students. And the students have access to this specific course in the Nexus. So you upload it, it transcodes it to a standard video format, like MP4, MOV, and it's a adaptive bit rate. So it's something like a Netflix would use or an Amazon. It can read how fast your internet connection is and also what device you're using, and helps to tailor it so that it goes through for a smoother experience. And we have a dedicated server that we run through Wowza, who happens to be here, and they didn't pay me to endorse them, but this is just what we use. And it seems to work pretty slick. I mean, we have security options in there. Our library has things, just like everybody has reserves, so we can put footage or a song for one person to use it at a time, just like you would if you went to reserve something in the library. We have playlists that we can lock down. And the URLs are pretty easy to slide in and out. But I found this reasonably priced and easy to use. And it works with, like I said, any LMS or CMS that your institution will use.
Great, thank you for that overview. John, somehow I got yours in next, so let's go to you next.
Okay. So what you're looking at here is a couple different options that we do. We do a video podcast, and we also do audio podcasts along with the flipped classroom model. So on the left-hand side is kind of what you would see that we would use. That's exactly the equipment that we use either to do an on-location podcast, so we'll actually go out and film on location inside our schools of an event or an accomplishment that students or staff members are doing, and we put this podcast together that I film and edit. And then our teachers are using the same type of equipment to record their flipped classroom model at home, in a hotel if they're at a conference, anywhere they're at. As long as they have that equipment, they can use that to film for their flipped classroom. And the middle section is what we're using for our audio podcast. We do a superintendent radio show where he talks every week about news and events, strictly audio, and that's our mixer board for the mic inputs and headset inputs there, and the exact brand of headsets that we find that work very well. We also use this to do sports broadcasting. So the superintendent and I also do sports broadcasting, so I wear many hats in our district. So we do live streaming of athletic events as well. And then from those, I take that into Final Cut, and I use Final Cut to edit either the video or the audio. I found it a very useful, pretty easy platform for anybody. If you're familiar with GarageBand in the past, it's pretty much GarageBand on steroids is kind of how I explain it. But you could use that. That's what I use to edit it, and then we export everything to YouTube. We used to use Vimeo, but I kind of got tired of the restrictions that Vimeo was putting on your upload size. I think they're trying to get a little bit better to kind of compete with YouTube, but I've currently moved along to YouTube, and I've created playlists specifically for our district, for some of our teachers, for each grade level, K through 12. So that's kind of our area of video, audio, podcasting.
Great, thank you. Derek, let's go to yours.
So first, what I want to talk about is in terms of project goals, our webcast is set up as an on-demand webcast that we make available online for individuals. So we don't record it live. We have 40 webcasts per season that we do pretty much every week. The keys for us is we need to have our slides synced to video so that as people are watching the webcast, they can also see a shot of a video of someone talking. So at every point, they need to be able to see video. For that purpose, we went with a tool, and I'll get to it, called the Media Site Recorder that you see there, kind of towards the center. But in terms of our workflow, we're in a television studio setup for WOSU, and we have an audio board that we use. All of the professional items that you would have in a studio setting, we have that. We have the Aja that we use for playback, because we will show different videos during our webcast. We always encourage our presenters that we work with to show videos. So mainly what we're doing is our audience is doctors. So we have around 34 subscribing hospitals. So they need to be able to see different procedures. You don't know it, but your primary care physician might not be an expert in glaucoma or in a certain type of cancer. So they need to see certain surgeries and procedures, and we help with doing that with using the Aja. The robotic cameras, that's just the setup that we use, just reduces the cost. For the production switcher, they're using the Sony Anycast. It's an older switcher, but essentially it's taking all of those inputs go into the switcher, and then it spits it out as an SDI signal that goes into our media site recorder box. Think of the recorder as a live encoder. If we wanted to, we could also do live streaming as well, but we don't for our purposes. In addition to that, we have a PowerPoint workstation that we allow the PowerPoint slides are captured as JPEG images, and then they go into the presentation with the recorder. So the thing that the recorder does for us is, and it doesn't really matter for us what company we use Sonic Foundry's Media Site Recorder because we needed to have those slides synced to video. And it does it really well, where as we click on any slide, it'll capture the JPEG image. Once it captures the image, the other part is we have the media site management console that you see at the top, the blue box, one of the blue boxes at the top. What that is on that end, we have streaming servers that are distributed on our campus internally, and we have the Office of Distance Education and E-Learning that manages those recorders. What's great for us is we don't have to pay for those recorders. They do all of the support, they do all the maintenance and management. For me and others at our university, we just get to play with them. So it just makes it great for us because they provide all the support. What happens with the media console is I can go on and I can determine the player, whether it's picture-in-picture, whether it's a certain type of layout and look, whether I have certain graphics or headers on the video. What's also most important is I can, two elements that are really key for us is we have to provide a streaming version and we have to provide a downloadable version. And this product allows us to do that. We can go in and click a downloadable version of our webcast that we have available as a zip that we put in our LMS. And then we also have our streaming link URL that we put in our LMS as well. In addition, I mentioned podcasts a little bit earlier. We have a podcast that we're able to generate an RSS feed for our podcasting with this management console. So there's lots that you can do from a management of our content standpoint. And then what's great about it is if I do the podcast, I can delete podcasts easily, or I can turn them on if I want. So that console allows me to do that. And then you can take it through schools. You know, if you think about back in the 2000s, early 2000s, where you could have tools like FeedBurner and run your podcast through there to make that, you know, where you can have logos and other things and make it iTunes friendly. In addition to the console, like if you see the LMS, coming down from there, we provide our webcasts on computers and on Android and iOS devices. One of the things that was key for using this tool for Sonic Foundry is we could do the HLS streaming and we mainly use on the back end the smooth streaming feature that they have, and it actually plays it out as HLS streaming for delivery to Android and iOS devices. And then I think for the computer playback, it'll either do Silverlight or Flash for that delivery. And that's our workflow and some of our project goals.
What's the settings? I mean, is this in a studio that you're doing?
Good question. The setting is in a studio where we do our recording. Essentially what we do is we have a set that we've purchased, and then also we have our recorder that we keep, the same one that looks just like that. We keep it in the studio, and it just captures the video feed and the PowerPoint presentation right into the webcast recorder.
And there is a director and a post-production
Good question. Yes, we have a director, like a regular director you would see in a studio or in a news channel. We have an audio person. I'm also in there as the producer, kind of giving cues on certain things. It will also have a clicker person that actually goes through our presentation. So for our PowerPoint, we treat it as a full production. So within the PowerPoint, in the notes section, we'll have all of that's printed out, and we'll kind of use it as our script that we have.
Last question. So which software do you guys use to post-production?
For post-production, good question. Within the Sonic Foundry tool, another element is there's an editor that goes along with the recorder. It's actually installed on the recorder. But that's, like I said, that's a good question. In terms of editing the webcast, what we use that editor for is we trim off the part that we don't want at the beginning and the part that we don't want at the end. And then we're also able to make chapter points. So all of our title slides have a chapter point that we put in after the fact, and we use the editor for that purpose. So in terms of workflow, once we capture the recording, I'll make a copy of it. I'll do my edits, chapter points, trimming, and then I'll upload it to the media site server, which is essentially the same as the media site console. And then what happens on the back end is the video, since we do adaptive streaming to maybe 2 or 3 different bit rates up to 1.2 megabits per second, there's some encoding that happens on the back end that I never see it, but I usually get an alert in my management console that it's done.
I see another question out there.
How many end users do you have on receiving your live stream?
For the live stream, it's hard for us to tell like actual, we don't do the live stream. In terms of numbers, for our purposes, since we're going for we provide CME credits for doctors, we usually go by how many people are watching. So we usually have around 300 or so CME credits for each webcast that they view. Technically what they do, they go to our learning management system, and then they can go watch the webcast and then take the post-test. So sometimes there are 30 people watching in a group setting.
Okay, but not live. It's
Not live, just on
And
demand.
then there was a question in the row behind.
Yeah, you said you could do it live, though.
We could do it live. It's just a matter of doing a different template that will support live streaming.
And with the slides, so you could have video next to slides?
Yes, we could do the same thing. If you go to our website, I'll make sure I give you a card afterwards, but you could just, if you go and look at the webcast, the same thing that we do on demand, we could just flip the switch and just make it live.
Which would be great, live video and synchronized slides, both live or on demand the way they do it today.
And the quizzing part is separate from this. The quizzing or the exam.
Yes, the quizzing separate. We have a customized LMS that we're fortunate to have a web developer that does. So anything that we need, they can go in and create, so we don't have to use another, learning management system.
In LMS.
The video is just really a link in the LMS. So when I go, there's certain things that I'll do. I'll put a link in for the URL. It's just a text box that has a URL option for the URL link.
And view on their desktops. There's no player or TV. It's just, right?
Yes, they can view on their desktop, any computers, and then on their devices. We try to focus on Android and Apple, iOS devices.
Okay, I saw, oh, sorry.
We don't have an app for it.
I saw a hand in the back.
Is your audio and video synced at the production recorder, or is it when you send the SDI signal over to your encoder? Where's the audio and video synced?
Oh, the audio and video is synced on our production switcher. So when it's coming through the switcher, there's a knob on there that you can bring in the audio. So it's all done in there. And then we just get that SDI out, and it's embedded SDI audio.
Nobody else is asked, oh, here, maybe you'll ask the question I have in mind. Go ahead, please.
I was just curious, how large are the files that you're working with?
Good question. In terms of the final product that I have?
Yeah, going to the Q Pro, the audio.
Oh, good question. So for the Aja, I forget right off the top of my head, but it's using ProRes 422, which usually, I don't know the exact size, but I'm trying to think real quickly. I think 422 is it about 220 megabits per second? Someone please correct me if I'm wrong. But it's, in terms of files, I don't know right off the top of my head. I don't usually do that production part. I'm not the director. I'm just a producer. The producer makes those files, but they're really not that large for our purpose. Okay.
Okay, and the question I was wondering about was, you mentioned that on the computers, students are typically watching using Silverlight or Flash. And with both of those technologies on the wane in general, do you foresee a time when you won't be able to support those, or you'll move to an HTML5 player? What are your plans as far as supporting desktop as those technologies go out of popularity?
Good question. And the great news is, since we use companies such as Sonic Foundry, we have the ability to just really tap into what they make available. What's great is we're seeing that smooth streaming and Flash is eventually going away, and it's been talked about that Flash is going away, and it hasn't gone away just yet. But so we're kind of seeing that on the horizon. And for me personally, I want to see MPEG Dash as well as HLS adoption. We're not really sure what's going to happen with Apple. But one of the things that I found out from the company is that they will support different types of delivery for eventually, and I don't want to quote them, but they will provide potentially HLS. For anyone, everyone familiar with MPEG Dash? Raise your hands if you are. Okay. So for MPEG
half the
Dash,
audience.
we see that that's going to be the streaming standard, kind of like H.264 was the streaming standard, which really, you know, it's a standard, but you also have to know what Apple's going to do. So we see MPEG Dash, that's one of the things that we want, but we also want HLS streaming. So for my purposes, I don't care if it's everyone using MPEG Dash or if it's everyone using MPEG Dash and also using HLS. Sonic Foundry should make MPEG Dash available. They've already talked about it in their media console. What they also do is they provide the playback experience. So they do all the coding in the link that I get. It's all kind of created in the page and playback on the server. So they will provide MPEG Dash, and they will provide, if Apple doesn't come on board with MPEG Dash, HLS streaming. So it kind of solves that issue.
Right, and that's something we see our customers all sort of migrating slowly within the next year or two towards HLS and Dash. It seems to be a very common theme. And then, of course, a lot of players like the BitDash player now support both Dash and HLS, and as does JW Player. So we see more convergence towards those as being the primary streaming formats.
In which I love. I love MPEG Dash and I love HLS.
Yeah.
Me personally, I don't care if HLS goes away or not because it's probably one of the easiest types of streaming to implement.
All right. Well, Chris, we've kept you sort of waiting to have your turn here. Let's move on to your deployment.
So the course that I support is a free and open online course, open to the world. It's on modern and contemporary American poetry. It's taught by Al Filreis. I mention that because I might use his name and you won't know what I'm talking about if I don't say that. So the way the course is laid out is that it's 10 weeks long and it's 100 pre-recorded videos. We recorded them in 2012. Every fall we run the course. It's 10 weeks long. To give the course some life and to bring the students really into it, to give them a place to interact with the professor, we do a live weekly webcast. And that helps us to create some engagement and give the students really center stage and a voice. So we needed a solution. Since it's an open course, we get a ton of people signing up for this, anywhere from 30 to 40,000 students. Now, since it's free, most of them might not necessarily show up, but we're not really sure. So we needed a streaming solution that was scalable. We didn't have anything on campus that would support that. We needed something that supported virtual participants in case we wanted to bring a professor from the West Coast into our webcast. We had limited budget and space, and we needed something that broke down and set up pretty easily, but still generated a good webcast. And we needed something with quick turnaround. We only had a few months to come up with a solution. And lastly, we needed something a way to enable interactivity between the students and the professor. So this is what we came up with. On the far left, in the front, that stick figure represents Al Filreis. He's much more human looking in real life. We do actually have a live audience, and so that part of the clip art is accurate. So what we did is we got 3 pretty budget-friendly Canon Vixia cameras, RF 500s. I think they came out with the 600 now. Only maybe a few $100 a piece, but they're good enough to give us an HD signal via an HDMI output. So we're able to take a HDMI output from each camera, run it into a Blackmagic Intensity Extreme box, which captures the video, and in turn each box plugs into our Mac Pro via Thunderbolt. On the audio side of things, we have Shure SM58s, easy choice, that run into a Mackie 12-channel mixer. We take the main mix out of that, and that goes into the line input on our Mac Pro. And now we have everything in the Mac Pro. We use Telestream Wirecast to kind of manage our 3 cameras, to switch between them, to add graphics, to mix in the audio, and to ultimately create one output signal, which we then port into Google Hangouts on Air. Now, Google Hangouts on Air basically is our method of distribution to the world. Basically, when we create a Google Hangout on Air, we get an iframe embed code that we can copy and paste into our course's web page. And Wirecast will create what's called a virtual camera output, which means that Hangouts on Air will see the feed from Wirecast as if it's a USB camera. So it works out really well for us. And below that, you can see I have a picture of some of the virtual participants that we're also able to invite into the Hangout on air, which Hangouts makes it really easy to bring them in. So Hangouts on Air claims to support an unlimited number of viewers, and we've pushed it to close to 1,000 without any hitches. Generally, we have 300 to 700 viewers, and then the recordings are automatically generated and available when the live session is over, and they get another couple thousand views, generally speaking. Some of the things we do to encourage engagement from our viewers is we take live phone calls. It's pretty old school, but it works remarkably well. We get people calling in from all over the world to ask questions and to interact with Al, the professor. Like I said, it's really about the students, these webcasts. They're given center stage. We also monitor a Twitter hashtag. We're getting into Twitter polls this coming season. Something we borrowed from radio is we created a voicemail line. So if any students have questions or comments during the week that they might want addressed or answered in the webcast, we set up a phone number with Google Google Voice, and you call and you can leave a message and we'll listen to it and maybe play it back on air. And we're looking into getting into Facebook live streaming and Periscope streaming in addition to our traditional webcast output for this fall. So we're still working on figuring out how to do that exactly, but we have a pretty strong following on Facebook and Twitter, so we want to leverage that if we can.
Great, thank you. I know I threw in one other slide that you had suggested here, just so folks could see how that was presented. Because when you first said that you had, 1,000 people watching, I was trying to picture 1,000 little boxes of video coming in from all those folks. But it's just the presenters, right? The presenter who's there in person, and then those few folks that you bring in from like a different coast or something and have them. So that's what it looks like, I take it.
Exactly correct. Yeah, that's our feed in the main portion of the box. And then Google Hangouts, when you invite virtual participants, they put each one in a little box on the bottom of the screen. And as the organizer or the producer of the broadcast, you can switch between any of them and make them full screen if you would like. And this page also shows how we encourage interactivity by embedding those elements into the same web page as our feed. So we have our Twitter feed on the right, we have our voicemail line, we have some discussion forums on the bottom, not viewable, but that's how we kind of encourage the engagement.
All right, thank you.
Yes.
Sorry, was there a question? Go ahead.
There are different types of participants in Hangouts. There are participants and viewers. Is that what you were saying?
Oh, the virtual participants are specifically people we invite into the broadcast.
And then there are others who view, there are hundreds who view,
Right.
who participate.
Right, all right. That's a good clarification. Yeah, we can bring virtual participants. When I use that term, I mean people we actually want visible in the broadcast. But then the actual stream is available to all of our students.
And can they, you said they call, but can they also type in questions?
Right. Yeah, we take phone calls right now, and we'll take type-in questions. Usually via Twitter is how we're taking questions via text.
Okay.
We thought about taking text messages as text messages as a method of taking questions, but we haven't tried that yet.
No.
So that's another thing we're thinking about. But.
Go ahead.
Google Hangouts is managing your virtual participants and generating your final screen.
Correct.
Is Google Hangouts also how you're getting to the final user?
Right.
As well? Okay.
Right, yeah. When you create a Google Hangout, right away when you create it, they'll give you an iframe embed code that you can copy and paste into your web page or wherever you would like, and then the player will appear there. So.
Are you monitoring that on the Mac Pro, or you have a separate computer for that?
Right, the Mac Pro is doing all the heavy lifting, actually. So.
And also receiving it?
Right, correct.
And is there a subscription for Google Hangouts?
Google Hangouts is actually a free service. Right. It's worked out pretty well for us. We've pushed it pretty heavily in terms of viewership. We've had close to 1,000 viewers, and it's been pretty solid. It is a web-based solution, so if your browser crashes, so does your webcast. So, but it's been pretty stable for us over the past 4 years. So.
Okay. Question in the back there.
A related question, with Google Hangouts, do you set up any kind of tech spec for the people that are coming in on it so that your video all the way across sort of matches? I mean, because obviously what you're producing might have a higher, quality video than what's coming in over Google Hangouts.
So you're basically
How do
asking.
you deal with the disparity?
You're basically asking if he sets a spec for all the virtual participants who they want to show up so that all the video looks consistent as you switch from one presenter to another, I guess, sounds like.
Exactly.
Right. I mean, we're pretty much limited to the hardware that our virtual participants are using. We encourage some basic best practices, such as how they frame the webcam, and we generally encourage them to use headsets with microphones on them. But that is a limitation. We only can work with what they're giving us in terms of video quality.
And so you don't get any feedback or anything about that, or?
Yeah, feedback from the viewers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody said, I hate the fact that the aspect ratio on that guy's 4:3 and this guy, it has bad lighting, and I mean, or this guy's low quality.
People doing CEUs because, if they're doing it for credits and, they can't hear somebody or they can't see something that someone is presenting, that, can cause an issue.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
I can see that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, if you can't hear or see a presenter, that would definitely be, especially if you can't hear them, that's always a super pain point. The video can get fuzzy, but if you can't hear them, especially for poetry, it seems like a problem.
Right. Yeah, so actually one of the things I should have mentioned about this free course is that it's actually not for credit. Right, maybe if money was involved, people would complain more. But yeah, we've had pretty good success with it. And if somebody doesn't have a good connection, we're able to kind of remove them from the webcast and reestablish their connection on the side if we want to.
Kind of bounce on that for a
Yeah,
second?
please go ahead.
I think kind of one of the benefits like that we see doing the flipped classroom model is that the teacher is recording it by herself. So if there is any of that technical difficulty, she can go back and re-record it. He or she can go back and re-record it. Then, it's on the student kind of if they have internet issues. We can't control what their internet is. One thing that we push in our school is we're a bring your own device school district, so kids can be walking around hallways with their iPads or laptops, phones, and those students can go back during their meeting time and rewatch that podcast or that video that the teacher posted to kind of refresh their memory. So I think that might kind of help with some of the issues of maybe not going the Google Hangout way. That's kind of why we haven't done it that route. So it's kind of up to the teacher to man that herself or himself.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
What kind of software do you guys use to manage these videos of classes and videos?
So we let the teachers kind of do their own thing. We don't.
Can you repeat the question?
He asked what kind of management system we use to manage the videos or the podcasts for playback. Really, is that
Playback management and delivery and
for playback management and delivery. So, like I was saying, our teachers really utilize what they see fit. We're a Google Apps for Education school district, so we do a lot with Google Drive. We do a lot with YouTube, hence the reason I upload a lot of stuff to YouTube. So whatever way they see is the best way to get that to the students is up to them. On my end, I kind of have my own, I have 3 or 4 external hard drives because I want things right there with me. I don't want them on a server. I want to be able to control them myself. And people have access to that. We just started a cloud-based service with our IT support that we have in our school district, and they allow access for other people, administrators, that they can go grab the video if they need it for something, but chances are they're not editing the video. It's usually me. But we use that for like logos and pictures and stuff like that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, definitely. So each teacher has its own.
Yep. Same way with all of our teachers are required to have their own website for a learning system for their parents and students. and we let them use whatever they see fit. So they could be using Google Classroom, they could be using WordPress, Schoology, anything like that. So we're pretty open to teachers kind of doing their own thing.
Great. Thank you for all the questions. We've reached the bottom of our time already, unfortunately. I imagine you all have questions. I had more questions. If you have further questions, our panelists will be here for a few minutes. Please feel free to come find them. They've said they'd be willing to share their email with any of you that want to have follow-ups. In the meantime, please stick around for the next session, which starts in 15 minutes. All along the hall here, all these next sessions will start in 15 minutes. And thank you all for coming.